Viewer discretion is advised.
No one in the studio knew that this morning's broadcast would become the most talked about 40 minutes in the history of Good Morning America. Not the producers sipping their first coffees, not the camera operators adjusting their lenses, not even Sam Champion, who walked onto the set wearing the same easy smile that had carried him through thousands of smooth, civilized interviews. Warming the glass desk where Sam placed his notes, his hands were steady, his breath calm. It was a normal day, or at least, that's how it looked. But beneath the surface, something felt off. A quiet tension that Sam couldn't name. A faint pressure in the air, like the room was holding its breath. Producers would later say it was coincidence. Others would call it instinct, but whatever it was, Sam felt it. He looked toward the entrance as the floor manager signaled. Prince Harry had arrived. The studio doors opened with a calculated slowness, and Harry stepped inside. Not like a guest entering a talk show, but like a figure stepping onto a stage built for him. Shoulders back, chin high, movements sharp and deliberate. His presence shifted the room's balance in an instant. The audience clapped enthusiastically, but even their applause sounded different. Scattered, unsure, like their palms already sensed what their minds didn't yet know. Harry walked toward Sam with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. It looked like a mask someone had handed him right before he entered. Sam stood to greet him. "Good to have you with us this morning," he said gently. "Of course," Harry replied, sitting down with a confidence that bordered on territorial. "Glad to be here." But Sam heard something under the surface, a hint of impatience, a tightness in the tone that didn't match the words. The floor manager counted down from 5. Cameras rolled, the cheer faded, and the moment the red light blinked on, the room shifted again. Sam began the interview the same way he always did, with the dignity and warmth that were practically stitched into his DNA. He asked about Harry's charity initiatives, his work with veterans, his recent travels. Safe questions, smart questions, human questions. Answered them, but with an undercurrent that grew sharper each time he opened his mouth. "Quite basic questions, don't you think?" he finally said, leaning back as if inspecting Sam. Because the audience's reaction was subtle but immediate. A shift of posture, a tightening of shoulders, a quiet murmur among the front row. Some thought he was joking, others knew instantly he wasn't. Sheriff held his expression steady, but inside, gears moved. The tone had changed. The coordination between guest and interviewer had shifted. It was now a balancing act. "Well," Sam replied evenly, "we start with what our viewers are most curious about, but we can go deeper." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't let irritation touch a single syllable. He simply adjusted, like a seasoned pilot hitting turbulence. Telecommunications, and yet Harry's reaction was instantaneous, like someone had lit a fuse. "Turbulence?" he repeated sharply when Sam mentioned them. His posture moved forward, shoulders tightening, the polite facade beginning to crack. "Is that what you're calling them?" His voice wasn't loud yet, but it had weight, a kind that made the hairs on the back of the neck stand up. Salmon kept his focus steady. "You've made several strong claims recently," he said, "and some of them have been questioned publicly. What do you say to people who weren't there?" Harry snapped. "They don't know anything. I lived it." Sentinel nodded slowly, the practiced nod of a journalist who has weathered storms more dangerous than live television. "Of course, but accuracy is important when your statements involve, 'Are you calling me a liar?'" It was. Crimson from irritation to accusation. Missions quick, sudden, loaded. Xiaomi inhaled sharply. The sound was small but unmistakable, a collective flinch. Sam didn't move, didn't blink. "I'm asking about the process," he said calmly. "That's what journalists do." Harry chuckled, a sharp, mocking sound that cut across the room like glass dragged across stone. "Journalists?" he murmured. "Please, you're a weatherman, Sam. Don't pretend you're something else." This time the audience didn't hide their reaction. A few gasps. A stunned whisper. Someone in the back muttered, "Whoa." The control room froze. The crew behind the cameras froze. Signed, the teleprompter operator stopped scrolling. Salmon felt something shift. Not anger, not ego, but a boundary. A quiet line inside him that rarely ever moved. His straightened slightly. His jaw wasn't clenched, but the muscles tightened enough to reveal that the blow had landed. Not emotionally, professionally. He chose his next words with precision. "I've been a journalist for more than 20 years, he said softly, but with more authority than volume. Part of that job is asking questions that matter. Harry's expression hardened. "So let me ask you again," Sam continued. "Do you stand by every public statement you've made recently?" The room seemed to lose air for a second. Blackmail leaned forward sharply, like a man bracing for impact. "Every one of them. And I don't appreciate being interrogated like a criminal." "This isn't an interrogation," Sam replied. "It's a conversation, the kind you agreed to sit for." Harry's fingers twitched on the armrest. His breathing grew uneven, not wild, but simmering, like a pot about to spill over. "Maybe I made a mistake coming here," he said, voice rising. Sam stayed centered. His composure was a lighthouse cutting through a storm. "Asking follow-up questions isn't an ambush," he said. "It's standard practice." That was the match, the spark, the ignition point. Harry shot up from his chair. Stemmed sound of the chair legs echoed like a blade dragged across a marble floor, sharp, chilling, abrupt. "You know what your problem is?" Harry said, voice vibrating with fury. "You act like you care, like you're friendly, but you're just like all the rest. You want the drama." The studio was silent. Every heartbeat in the room could have been counted. Silk didn't move, didn't stand, didn't flinch. He simply lifted his eyes to meet Harry's. "I'm doing my job," he said quietly. "If that feels like an attack, maybe the issue isn't the questions." That line, measured, calm, and devastating, was the moment people would later replay in slow motion, analyzing every syllable, every breath, every flicker in Harry's expression. Something inside Harry cracked. Simmons inside Sam steadied, and everyone watching felt it. Harry's breath hitched, just enough for the closest camera to catch it. A tremor of disbelief crossed his face, the kind that appears when a man expected obedience and instead meets resistance. He wasn't yelling anymore. Not yet. Something quieter filled the space between them. Something sharper. Samer slowlessly from his seat, not in challenge, not in anger, but with the controlled precision of someone who refuses to let the ground tilt beneath him. He stood tall, steady, unshaken. Harry's jaw worked as if he were grinding down unspoken accusations. His eyes searched Sam's face, looking for weakness, apology, retreat. But none existed. "You're not ready to speak publicly," Sam said at last, his tone firm but calm. "If basic accountability feels like hostility." The words didn't punch, they landed. Harry recoiled, something invisible yet undeniable. That single statement took the emotional center of the room and flipped it on its axis. Members exchanged glances, some leaned forward instinctively. Even the crew, hardened professionals who had seen their share of on-air chaos, felt the stretch of the moment. Harry's voice rose again, but now it cracked in a new direction. Not just anger, pride, ego, submissive identity under attack. "Not ready?" he repeated. "You think I'm not ready?" His voice jumped an octave, shaky with indignation. "Do you have any idea what I've lived through, the scrutiny I've survived, and you," he jabbed a finger at Sam, You're standing there pretending you're qualified to judge me? Sam didn't break eye contact. He didn't even blink. A lifetime in the news had taught him something Harry didn't know. Silence is sometimes the strongest reply. So Sam let the silence sit. Sickness, crimson, settle, flaming, undeniable. Sam inhaled slowly. When he finally spoke, his voice dropped to a calm, steady register that somehow carried more weight than Harry's rising volume. "I'm qualified to ask questions," Sam said. "You're the one who chose to be here. And now you're angry because I'm doing exactly what every journalist should." A ripple moved through the audience, quiet murmurs, a few nods, the subtle sound of people shifting in support. For a moment, Harry looked genuinely stunned. He wasn't used to walls. He wasn't used to a host pushing back instead of folding. "This is pathetic," Harry muttered. "You're making this into something it's not." "What's pathetic," Sam responded, "is a grown man refusing to handle basic questions without calling them attacks." Kelly in the room dropped by several degrees. Harry blinked rapidly, his face reddening, twisting. "You're trying to make yourself look strong," he snapped. "Trying to get attention by going after me." Sam took one step closer, not aggressive, not confrontational, simply reclaiming the space Harry was trying to tip in his favor. "I don't need attention," Sam said. "I've done this for a long time. I know who I am. What I don't do is let any guest, royal or not, talk down to my crew, insult my profession, or bulldoze their way through a conversation." Shemmer opened his mouth, ready to fire back. Stiffness finished the sentence before he could speak. "If that bothers you, you're free to leave." Silenced. The room froze. Miss stall. Time held. Harry stared at Sam like he'd misheard him. "What did you just say?" Sam repeated it, word for word, tone unchanged. "Free to leave." A collective shiver ran through the studio audience. This wasn't television anymore. This was a line in the sand. Hamas' body stiffened. His voice, once booming, dropped to a hiss. "You think you can dismiss me?" "You're dismissing yourself," Sam said. "I'm just acknowledging it." That did it. Harry's restraint snapped fully now. He spun toward the exit, his footsteps loud, echoing, uneven. But before he reached the edge of the set, he turned back around, because he had one more wound left to inflict. "You're a small man, Sam," he said bitterly. "A small, desperate man who wants to feel powerful for once." The words hung heavy, brutal, personal, miscalculated. Sam's producer stepped into frame, not dramatically, not aggressively, just with the authority of someone who had hit their limit. "That's enough," she said. "We're done here." Harry blinked, caught off guard. "You can't be serious." Security said calmly, "Please guide our guest out." Two guards emerged from the side, a quiet presence, steady stance, firm posture. They didn't touch Harry. They didn't need to. Their appearance alone was enough to communicate what words could not. Harry looked around the studio as if expecting someone, anyone, to intervene on his behalf. No one did. Not the crew, not the audience. Crimson. "This is unbelievable," Harry muttered, but his feet were already moving. The guards walked beside him without a word. No aggression, just silent certainty. The cameras cut. The lights dimmed. The studio exhaled at once, as if everyone had been holding their breath for far too long. Sam sank back into his chair. His hands trembled faintly. Not fear, not regret. Adrenaline. Blouse of standing firm. The papers on his desk and lifted his eyes to the camera lens. A lens that had recorded every second of the explosion. "We'll be right back," he said with quiet steadiness. And the moment the broadcast cut to commercial, the studio walls erupted in a chaos of whispers, pacing, and disbelief. When the commercial break hit, the studio felt like a shaken snow globe. Thoughts, emotions, whispers, all swirling in the air, looking for a place to land. The tension wasn't gone. It had simply changed shape. What had been sharp and electric moments earlier was now heavy, weighty, almost surreal. Sam stood slowly, pressing both palms against the desk to steady himself. He wasn't the kind of man who got rattled easily. Not after decades of live television, wild weather events, unpredictable guests. But this had struck something deeper. His body wasn't trembling anymore, but he could feel the edges of his heartbeat in his fingertips. A production assistant rushed toward him. "Sam, are you okay?" He nodded, though the nod came a second late. "Yeah, I'm fine." She stood beside him, wide-eyed. "I've never seen anything like that. Ever." Sam allowed himself a faint exhale, almost a laugh, but not quite. "Me neither." Behind him, the studio was coming back to life. Lights still hummed overhead, but the room itself was buzzing. Quietly, intensely. Some audience members sat stiffly, still processing what they'd witnessed. Others leaned toward each other, whispering in fragments. "He really said that? Sam handled it so well. I thought he was gonna throw something. Did you see the producer's face?" From control room, everything was movement. Two editors were already replaying the footage on a screen, analyzing angles, capturing moments. The director kept muttering, "This is going to explode online. Oh, it's definitely going viral." Back on the main floor, Sam's co-host made her way toward him. She didn't speak right away. She placed a hand lightly on his arm. A gesture of grounding, of solidarity, of "I saw what you saw. You kept your cool," she said softly. "I don't know how you did it."
Sam shook his head, eyes drifting to the door where Harry had disappeared moments earlier. "I didn't want it to go that way." "No one thinks you did," she said. But Sam wasn't sure. Live television was a fragile universe. Viewers interpreted tone, posture, micro-expressions. Social media judged within seconds. Clips spread faster than explanations. Intent didn't matter as much as perception. He swallowed. "I just hope I didn't come off as confrontational." His co-host laughed gently. "Sam, he insulted you. He insulted your job. He insulted the entire darn studio. And you stood there like a rock. Trust me, you looked like the reasonable one." Before Sam could respond, the floor manager's voice cut through the chatter. 30 seconds! 30 seconds until the show resumed. 30 seconds to recompose. Crimson, seconds to transform chaos into professionalism. Sanctions, Sam took a deep breath and returned to his chair. He adjusted his tie slightly, a subconscious habit that surfaced only when he needed to center himself. In the reflection on the glass desk, he saw himself clearly. Eyes slightly tired, expression controlled, posture steady. The image of a man who had survived a storm without letting it drag him under. The countdown began. 5, 4, 3, 2, and on 1, he slipped seamlessly back into the version of himself that America trusted. Warm, composed, unwavering. "Welcome back," he said, voice smooth but still carrying the echo of what had just occurred. For those just joining us, we had to cut our previous segment a bit early due to some unexpected complications. But the show goes on. Sluggish, sarcasm, No venom, no venom, no shade. Just calm, honest professionalism. The audience began to clap, soft at first, then heartier. It wasn't applause for a segment, it was applause for him, for dignity under fire, for patience under provocation, for balance under pressure. Sam smiled gently. "We've got a full morning ahead," he continued, "so let's get back on track." His co-host picked up the next segment flawlessly, giving Sam a moment to breathe. As she spoke, he glanced around the studio, noticing the camera operator subtly giving him a thumbs up, a producer mouthing, "You nailed it." Audience members watching him instead of the ongoing segment, admiration in their eyes. It wasn't pride that filled him. Scrimmage, James's, it was something quieter, something truer. Salmon, validvisable. The rest of the show flowed without a hitch. Lighter topics returned. Weather updates, lifestyle tips, a cooking demonstration. Yet beneath every smile, every joke, every smooth transition, the undercurrent of what had happened earlier remained. Everyone felt it. Everyone remembered it. Everyone would talk about it. And yet, Sam carried himself through every second with grace. When another commercial break arrived, Sam leaned back in his chair as the exhaustion finally caught up to him. His producer approached, this time with a softness that contradicted the authority she'd shown earlier. "Sam," she said gently, "you handled yourself perfectly." He gave her a tired smile. "Wasn't sure if I pushed too hard." "You didn't push," she said. "You held the line." The phrase struck him. Held the line. Not fought, not attacked, not escalated. Held. And it was true. Meanwhile, backstage, Harry's exit was still being discussed. Crew members recounted the moment security stepped in. Some were shaken, others were angered by the disrespect. A few simply stood in disbelief. No matter their reaction, one thing was unanimous. Said not been the problem. Minutes later, as Sam returned on air for the final segment of the show, he addressed the audience with the same calm confidence he had begun the day with. But inside him, something had changed. A quiet realization, a reaffirmation of who he was. When the show finally wrapped and the closing music faded, staff members approached him with relief, praise, and gratitude. "You kept the show together. You didn't let it get ugly. You did your job better than anyone could." Simmons smiled politely, thanked them, but inside he felt something else stir, an introspective heaviness. Not regret, not guilt, just the weight of the moment. A moment he knew would follow him beyond the studio walls. When Sam stepped off the set, the applause still echoed faintly behind him. The studio had returned to its usual rhythm, but he hadn't, not yet. The hallway, staff members stopped him every few steps. Were incredible. He completely crossed the line. You stayed calm the whole time. Sam smiled politely, but his mind replayed the confrontation in flashes. The rising tension, the insults, the choice he made to stand firm. It was over, yet it clung to him like static. In the dressing room, he finally let himself sit. The moment he was alone, his shoulders dropped and he exhaled deeply. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving a quiet, lingering ache. His phone lit up, messages pouring in. Friends, colleagues, journalists, most saying the same thing. You did the right thing. Still, Sam stared at the screen for a moment before replying to anyone. He needed silence, breathing space, a moment to understand his own feelings before absorbing everyone else's. He rubbed his temples lightly. Confrontation wasn't who he was. He didn't enjoy it. He didn't seek it. But he believed in respect, in truth, in professionalism, and he believed in protecting the people who showed up every day to make live TV possible. A soft knock came at the door. The makeup artist peeked inside. "You okay, Sam?" she asked. He nodded. Yeah, just one of those mornings. You handled it better than anyone I've ever seen, she said. Most hosts would have snapped. Sam offered a grateful smile. Thanks. When she left, he grabbed his jacket and headed down the hallway. More encouraging pats on the back, more supportive murmurs, more proof he wasn't alone in how he handled it. Outside, the sunlight felt warm on his skin, like the day was trying to offer him something gentle after such intensity. As he walked to his car, Sam realized the simplest truth of all. He hadn't raised his voice. He hadn't disrespected anyone. He hadn't lost control. He just refused to be stepped on. And Rat's small, standing firm was what people would remember. He took a deep breath, unlocked his car, and allowed himself one small, relieved thought. Tomorrow. By the time Sam reached home, the incident had already spread. Clips circulated online, headlines popped up, commentators weighed in. Some were shocked, others proud, many simply replaying the confrontation like it was a scene from a drama they couldn't look away from. Sam set his keys down, made himself a cup of coffee, and sank into the quiet of his living room. The contrast felt surreal. Hours ago, he'd been under bright studio lights, holding his ground against a storm. Now, he was alone, with only the steady hum of his home to fill the space. His phone rang again. This time, it was the network. Salmon, we're behind you completely, his boss said. You showed restraint. You showed professionalism. You did exactly what we expect from a journalist. Sam felt a wave of relief he didn't realize he'd been waiting for. Thank you, he said softly. I just didn't want to make things worse. You didn't, his boss replied. If anything, you reminded people what integrity looks like. After the call, Sam stepped outside onto his porch. The sky was turning gold with sunset, quiet and unbothered. He sat with his coffee and breathed in the calm. For the first time all day, he truly relaxed. It wasn't something how he carried himself through it. Respect isn't about titles. It isn't about fame. It isn't about who walks into the studio with more status. It's about how you treat people. Sam had treated Harry with respect until respect was no longer returned. And when pushed, he didn't break. He simply stood tall. As night settled in, he closed his eyes for a moment, letting the weight of the day finally drift away. Tomorrow would be another broadcast. New guests, new stories, new challenges. But now he knew something he wouldn't forget. When the moment demanded strength, he had found it. And that was the true headline of the day.